How's it going, everyone? I'm Dylan, this is All You Can Board, and it is time to get rid of some more board games. Sadly, I am not expanding my shelving anymore in here now that I'm in a permanent situation here with my condo. I'm realizing the limitations of how many board game shelves I can possibly have. You guys are aware of this little small one, obviously, and I have the big one that you saw in all our older videos before I moved here, off to the side here. I can't fit any more Calyxes right now, maybe eventually when I reorganize or something. So I do have to be a little bit more hard on myself in terms of what I keep in my collection and phasing out games that aren't getting played and stuff. It's something I wanted to do anyways, because when you hit a board game collection of 100 plus, getting close to 150, different things like that, different points, it gets harder to play a lot of those games, and there will be times where a year will go by and you'll look at something and say, I cannot remember if I even played that this year. I don't think I did. When was the last time I played that? I'm trying to pass these games on to other people so other people can enjoy them. So I have a variety of reasons why I'm getting rid of all the games that I'm getting rid of today. We're going to go over all those and kind of also discuss some of the other games that have replaced these games for me as well, in case you guys are curious. I've got what do I got here? 8 games that I'm getting rid of today. A whole variety of reasons. I think some of them are going to surprise people until they hear the reasons. Let's just jump right into it. I think I can reach them all from where I'm sitting. They're all off camera, so you guys can't see spoilers. Regardless, we're going to start with one that might initially shock people a whole bunch, but there's a really, really good reason for this one. So the first game that I'm going to be getting rid of from my collection is The Crew. And I know you're probably wondering, how on earth are you getting rid of this game? It's pretty simple. I am getting rid of this because I have Mission Deep Sea. I'm not saying that one for everyone will completely erase the relevance of the Quest for Planet 9. I think for a lot of groups, for a lot of people, it's still going to make a lot more sense just to get this one. But for me and the people that I play The Crew with, there's not a huge complexity boost in the Quest for Planet or in Mission Deep Sea, but there is a huge interest level increase for me. And this is a game I was obviously already super interested in and love to play. Mission Deep Sea just adds in missions that are or the little mission cards that are more interesting and just more fun to interact with. That for me, with the groups that I play with, I'm never going to choose to play Quest for Planet 9 when I can choose Mission Deep Sea, and because I own both, I can always make that decision. So it was an easy decision that I sort of started to realize after I got Mission Deep Sea, played a whole bunch of it, and did that comparison video. In my head, I thought, you know what, there's no way both these games are going to survive the long haul, even though they are smaller boxes. I do buy a lot of small box games as well. I do need the shelf space, believe it or not. And honestly, it just didn't make sense to keep both. So I'm hoping I can pass this on to somebody who, maybe hasn't experienced The Crew before, or has and just never picked up a copy, that they'll be able to see just how brilliant this game is. This has nothing to do with the quality of the game. This is an amazing game. It's high up on my top 50 of all time. It's high up on Carlo's as well. And it's one that I'm going to be coming back to for a long time to come. So it's just going to be the Mission Deep Sea version that I'll be coming back to. And I would not be shocked if we get more versions of The Crew in the future, given the popularity of it. So there may even be other versions I can jump into and get replaced. And if I even did start to regret this even just a little bit, Carlo, I believe, still owns Mission, or does he even own Quest for Planet 9? He owns one of them. I was going to say I'm pretty sure he owns Quest for Planet 9. I could play his, but now I'm wondering if he does own that copy. Regardless, no regrets, and I'm hoping that I can end up passing this off to someone who can enjoy it as much as I did. That is number 1, The Crew, the Quest for Planet 9. All right, moving on to the next game that I'm getting rid of. This is a game that I've had for a very long time, actually. One of the longer mainstays of my collection. I have not played it in a while, and it has been trumped by a newer version of this game that I only actually played on BGA, but I think it's made it so that I'm going to pick up that version, and this game's probably never going to get played again. So I'm preemptively getting rid of it because I haven't played as much either, and that is Dixit. So Dixit is a lovely game, one that I enjoy. I've enjoyed playing a whole bunch. It's really simple. It's a bunch of artwork cards, a deck of artwork cards, and tons of expansions. So you can add a bunch of these more abstract images to your game, and I think you're considered the storyteller is what it is, and you're basically picking a card and giving a clue for it, and then everyone else from their hand has all these abstract images. They're going to pick cards that they think represent the clue you gave as well. Those are all going to get mixed together, and I believe everyone is voting on which one they think was the original that I was trying to lead people to, given all the other ones that have also been played now as well. So very simple, but a lot of fun to play. It's just one I have not played in a long time. I kept this in my collection for a lot longer than I thought I would, mostly because I thought, hey, with the right group, and it's usually when it's come out for the right group, when there's not a lot of rules overhead, or I'm not able to explain a lot of rules because the people don't play board games as often, but we need something that's just, we can do around a table that is just fun and engaging, but not complex. Dixit was a really good answer to that conundrum, so to speak. But I've had other games come along now that just fit that mold a lot better. For instance, Pictures is one that I would likely play almost every time over Dixit, unless I was specifically trying to play with 6 players, as I believe Pictures only plays up to 5. But even more so than that now is, and I think Carlo would probably echo this with me because he's the one who had these sentiments first and then kind of shared them with me, is I played Stella on BGA, which is in the Dixit universe, and borrows a lot of the same elements from it. And even just playing that virtually through Board Game Arena, I actually much preferred it to Dixit, and I already do like Dixit. So for me, it made me realize, hey, one, you haven't played Dixit in years now. It's been at least 3 years since I played Dixit. So it's taken up room on my shelf and not getting played. 2, at this point, I think I'd rather just buy the physical version of Stella and introduce that with the groups that I would normally introduce Dixit to. And I'd be more interested to play because it's a newer game to me than say Dixit was. And yeah, more than anything, it's not getting played. And I have, like I said, alternatives like Pictures that will just hit the table more often with the groups that I would normally play Dixit with. So this is no knock on the quality of Dixit, although I would recommend that if you're looking into Dixit, to also look into Stella and just kind of make sure one isn't going to land a little bit better with your group or with you specifically in your collection, because they are very similar from the same universe. But I think Stella is going to prove, for me anyways, to be the stronger game over time. But no knock whatsoever on Dixit. It's a great game. If you haven't played it, I'd recommend checking it out. Great for families, great for people who don't game very often, and the artwork is really beautiful to look at. So it's leaving my collection. Doesn't mean it needs to leave yours, though. All right, the next game that is leaving my shelf is a game I have covered on the channel and mentioned a few times, and that is Beez. Now, Beez is a game with great production value, and it is a ton of fun, and I would honestly recommend you check it out. There's a theme so far, and then none of these games that I'm getting rid of are bad games. I honestly don't have many bad games, if any, on my shelf. I usually just have to part with games because they're not either as good as others, or there's other reasons like this one. So Beez is a great game, but it is very much a family game. And I'm not saying I don't play family games, but I have very few of them in my collection because I don't often need to have them hit the table. So they need to do something that kind of pushes it beyond the scope of a family game for me to keep it, or it needs to be, one of the definitive family experiences that I think, even if I'm only going to play this once a year or twice a year with the right people to come over, I want it to be this game. I want this game to keep hitting the table, so I keep it. Beez is a great game. It's just up against some other competition for me. We keep getting new family games, and we're playing Yak currently, and I've just created content for that as well. There's not going to be any shortage of them. I have Ingenious, which is another family game that I would probably gravitate to a little bit more than Beez, and so it's just in a really tough spot with the other games it's competing for shelf space for. I think that with if you're a family that is looking to play games with their kids, and you want something that is visually appealing and inviting, and has some this one has the little bees to kind of play with and enjoy moving around and everything like that. I wouldn't say it's super basic or anything. Like, the rules are not just like these really bare bone rules. There is actually some complexity to them, and I think that if you try to introduce this to someone too young of a crowd, you may kind of have it be a bit of a miss, or at the very least, they're not going to be going into the deeper strategy necessarily on Beez. But it is one that I think could be a gateway for some kids that are playing with their family and wanting something to sort of take them to that next stage of board games. And it is just a good game. It is honestly a really good game. I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed covering it. I just don't play it anymore, really. And I think that there's likely someone in the city that I could pass this on to that would absolutely love to play with this with their kids, with their family, with their significant other, whatever the case may be. So whatever the case may be. So that's the main reason that I'm getting rid of it. Like I said, no knock on the game. It's the third one in a row, and a lot of the ones I think I'm going to look at today, aside from maybe one, it's no bearing on the quality the quality is not the reason I'm getting rid of a lot of these games. So if you haven't played Beez, I would check, and you're wanting to know more about it, you can check out our how to play video and learn how it plays, and see if it's for you. And if it does seem like it's up your alley, I'd recommend it. Like it is very fun, and it will introduce some longevity in terms of the strategy and wanting to come back to it multiple times to see how you can compare your scores and beat your scores and things like that. But I would say that if you're, a deeper level gamer where you're playing a lot of strategic games and you're wanting to explore the meta and play multiple times and hone your score and really dive into it, Beez is going to have a ceiling in terms of that. So just make sure that it's the right, environment that you're bringing Beez into, that it's going to be able to flourish and have many plays. If you're constantly sitting down to play games like, Root or a lot of Uwe Rosenberg games, like the bigger box ones, and that's the kind of games you gravitate towards on a more regular basis. Beez might not be one that lands for you, but if you are interested in games like Yak or like Azul even and things like that, and you're playing those frequently, Beez might be one that'll kind of add another game to your shelf, to your collection, that you can start getting in that rotation. It is a great game. It's just sadly leaving my shelf. All right, and next up, this is one that I actually did feature in a Versus video somewhat a little while back, and I think I might have even mentioned it could eventually leave my collection based on the results of that Versus, and it is in fact leaving my collection, and that is New York Zoo. Now, I don't often get rid of Uwe Rosenberg games. In fact, I would highly recommend never getting rid of an Uwe Rosenberg game. I'm just kidding. But I am getting rid of this one, and that is because it has some very direct competition with another game in my collection, which is Barren Park, which is the game that I did the Versus video on. And honestly, if you had asked me this question like a year and a half ago, and like I said, I had to get rid of one of them, I likely would have gotten rid of Barren Park and kept New York Zoo. The reason that's changed is that I find that polyomino games specifically, I am often playing with people who have less board gaming experience. Not always, but a lot of the time, I would say. And the rules complexity of New York Zoo is much higher than Barren Park and without much additional reward, I would say. Sometimes you add a bunch of complexity to the rules, but when you wrap your head around it, it's like you're rewarded with a lot more strategic depth, or a lot more depth in general for having learned all these extra rules. With New York Zoo, I don't find that to be the case, and I feel like the only place that the place of the polyominoes is very minimal rules overhead. You're not going to get hung up there. It's mostly to do with the animals that you're placing on the polyominoes, and it's a really cool mechanic, and it's a neat extra layer of things to consider for a polyomino game. But it has always been the sticking point. Anytime I introduce New York Zoo to someone, it's always been that they either don't like, get hung up on, take a while to wrap their heads around, or end up making mistakes based around. And I don't feel like there's enough reward for the effort you're having to put in to learn and wrap your head around that mechanic and get good with that mechanic. Whereas Barren Park, yes, it's a more streamlined, simplistic polyomino game that it's not always doing tons new or bringing a lot new to the table, but it just does what it does very well. It's the same theme. It's a zoo theme, and you're placing polyominoes, but you're having to cover certain symbols at the right time in order to get other tiles specifically that you want, and certain symbols only let you access certain tiles, and the first one to surround different pits, you're getting these little statues to go onto them, and it's a race to get the higher point value statues. So it's stuff we've seen before. It's not doing a whole lot new. It just is a solid game, whereas New York Zoo definitely is trying to do something new with the animals. I just find that what it does is not worth the added explanation, the added complexity that comes with it. So it is a good game if you're looking to take your polyomino games a little bit to the next level while still having it be a race and the actual placement being simple. Like, the placing of the polyominoes in here is not complex at all. And honestly, selecting them from around the rondel, or whatever you want to call it, is also fun, and the way that certain ones get exposed as other ones get picked up. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in New York Zoo, and elements of the animals are really neat. It's just going to be a bit of a hang up with someone who, say, is used to playing Patchwork or used to playing Barren Park. This is going to feel like a step up in terms of rules overhead, but not in actual strategy. And I'm probably not doing the best job of explaining it, but I just don't find that the added complexity of the rules is worth anything at the end of the day. Whereas in Barren Park, you don't have that rules complexity, and you're rewarded still with a really solid experience that tends to be solid every time I play it. So it's just basically losing out to Barren Park. That's the main reason I'm getting rid of it. I would recommend Barren Park if you're looking to get pick up one of them. But that being said, this is still a game I would recommend to people, and this is still a game that I think the aesthetics and the way it looks on the table is really, really nice. And you can't beat all the little animal meeples, grouped into one enclosure all together, or the way your board looks with them all there, and trying to be the first one to complete the entire board. That's one aspect I liked in New York Zoo, is that it is a true polyomino race. Who can complete their entire board first wins. I played a lot of polyomino games, and yet not a lot of them have that specific mechanics. So it is still a great game, like the ones I looked at here today. It is just on my shelf, losing out to Barron Park, and I need to make room. It's a bigger box. I need to make room for other games. So it is leaving the shelf. All right, next up is a game that Carlo, I believe, actually had in one of his games that he's getting rid of video. I think I could be wrong. I didn't, and I probably should have checked beforehand to be 100% certain. But I'm just thinking that now. This is a game that I've had for, I think, like 2 or 3 years, 3 years maybe, and it is a good game. But it honestly is just over time getting beat out by more and more engine builders the more that I play, and it's losing a bit of its novelty and the reason I got it in the first place, and that is Gizmos. So Gizmos is a game that honestly I think more people should play, especially if you are someone who has not played a lot of engine builders and you want to get into engine builders, or you've played one that was complex and you need to kind of like reel it back in to find an entry level one and start like from there to better understand how engine builders work. I think Gizmos is honestly a great spot to start. Even just the aesthetics and how pleasant it looks on the table with having the actual structure that you're pulling your orbs out of, using the little orbs themselves, and the way they come out in a line. You have to see, like, you can only grab the colors that are showing, and then having your little enclosures that you're keeping them in. Like, it's going to be fun to use all the pieces. It's going to be enjoyable to play around the table and interact with all the components. That adds a lot. That can't be overstated when you're trying to use a game as sort of a gateway game for someone. You can have a game that is mechanically the perfect introduction to a genre. Like, let's say someone has designed the perfect intro worker placement game. If you want to get into worker placement games, this is no better place to start than this game. But if it is just completely ugly to look at, it has very weak components or no components, and it's just not fun to interact with, it's as a gateway game, a game that's trying to get someone into the hobby, into this genre specifically, it's going to probably fail on some levels, or with a lot of people. Gizmos is a good mix of, it is pleasant to play with, great to look at, and it's a pretty good introduction to the engine builder genre, and understanding that, like, how it's going to ramp up as you build your engine more effectively, and just what you need to go for, what time, and how you adjust your strategy on the fly. So I think the Gizmos is a really, really good game. I am just past the needing in a gateway game for engine builders. I kept this on my shelf for a long time, thinking if someone comes over that I'm wanting to introduce them to that genre, I can use Gizmos. And yes, this may be leaving a bit of a gap. I can't say that I guess I do have Splendor, which I guess is an engine builder, for sure is an engine builder. And in many ways, I would say Splendor is probably even a better gateway engine builder than Gizmos. But Gizmos, it feels like it's used like real engines. Like, there's actual engines involved. There's Splendors. You have to kind of explain to someone, well, the engine is you're getting more gems and having more things that cost cheap because of that. So for me personally, I'll have other alternatives like Splendor, like Project L, whatever the case may be, that I can go to introduce people to these kind of mechanics. I just don't need Gizmos to fill that spot anymore. And even if I kept it, I don't think that it would hit the table too often, because I'm either introducing someone to that concept with a different game, or I'm playing a more complex engine builder because I'm playing with people that don't need the gateway experience that Gizmos would deliver. So it's gotten enough plays in my collection that I don't feel too bad about it leaving. I'm glad someone else is going to get their hands on it and be able to introduce some people to it and have a lot of fun with it. And I honestly think this also does function as, like, do you want a game that you're going to play like multiple times over the course of like a year, and it's your only engine build in your collection? You play with maybe some, like, you have a 12-year-old kid or a 13-year-old kid or something like that, who's into the strategy of it and enjoys interacting with it, or whatever. Your friends coming over, like, that you can focus on just playing play a ton of Gizmos. I think you can get a lot of mileage out of this game, but I think it is going to have a ceiling where after a while you're like, okay, like what else can we step into now? What is the next step we can go into? I feel like I've explored a lot of this, or are we having games now feel a little bit similar, or I need more variety in my engines that I'm crafting. So I think there will be a bit of a ceiling for some people with Gizmos. There was for me, but that being said, the experience I did have with it, no regrets. It was a great experience. It's just time to move on. And it is a bigger box too, so again, freeing up room on my shelf is a big deal. Where can I stick this? Okay, let's go right there. All right, 3 games left, and I think, are they out of reach? Okay, they're not out of reach. I don't want to bring them on camera here. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is a game that I did cover in, I think it was one of the What I Played videos, saying I had dabbled in it, and I wasn't too impressed with it, and I was waiting to see if that would change over time. It hasn't changed over time, and it just might be a case of, you know, this is just not the right game for me right now, or just in general, and again, it's just taking up a spot on my shelf with the whole game played. It's time to pass it on to someone else. That is Kabuto Sumo. So Kabuto Sumo is a very pleasing game to look at on the table. You have this like raised ring with a bunch of different bug, like wooden type tokens on there. And the entire thing is it's a dexterity game. You're gonna be pushing your new pieces, your new wrestlers, bug wrestlers, onto this big ring, sliding them on, and other things are going to fall out of the ring at the same time, and you're trying to actually push your main opponent's bug piece out of the ring. They're trying to push yours out. You're trying to protect yours and create different things with the ones that you're adding on. There's different abilities that some of them will have, so it'll be different shapes that you're actually adding to the board. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here, and I feel like for kids specifically, they might get a lot of enjoyment out of, you know, even this is a game that if I had when I was a kid, when I was a kid, I would do things like I would take, you know, Hot Wheels cars, and I would create a ramp, and I'd have a huge Hot Wheel collection, and I would race my Hot Wheels cars in like a tournament bracket, and I would try to deem like what the best, fastest car I have is, and I would like do these things by myself. I would pass hours doing these kind of things. I was really independent and creating different games that I could play in my own time. And I feel like if I had Kabuto Sumo back then, I would have had like a ranked chart of all these wrestlers. I would have been like playing by myself and with other people. I had friends and stuff like that. I'm not saying that I only played by myself, but I would have for sure created this like little tournament and found out which bugs were the best ones, and like, you know, repeated this tournament every so often. This would have been a great game to have when I was younger. Now I just don't have enough people that it's in the table with. You know, dexterity games in and of themselves are more of a niche genre for me, and I think in general that they're not going to hit the table all that much, at least not for me, no matter what that dexterity game may be. And this one specifically is not one that I can say that I overly enjoy playing. So even more so than, or even less so than I normally would hit the table, Kabuto Sumo is just sort of taking up room on the shelf, gathering dust. So it wasn't the right game for me. It's not, you know, I didn't have as much fun with it as I know a lot of other people did, but I know that there are a lot of people out there who really, really enjoyed it, and it was the right dexterity game for them. So I have no doubt that someone else is going to end up with this in their collection, have a blast with it. It's just not the right game for me. This is the only one we're going to look at today that it's a quality issue for me. It's just not a game that I enjoy playing all that much, so it's going to have to go. All right, 2 games left. One of them, the next one, is one that I have covered on the channel. I think it was a How to Play. I'm forgetting all the videos we did. I'm pretty sure it's a How to Play. I think I also did cover it in, or did I even do a How to? Yeah, I can't remember if I did a How to Play on this. I know I covered it in Own It, Play It, Skip It, and it's stayed on my shelf for, I'd say, about a year and a half, a year, something like that, more than a year. But it just doesn't get played much anymore, and even though I like it, I don't like it enough to be the one to suggest it. And that is Neoville. So Neoville is from Phil Walker Harding, and I am a big Phil Walker Harding fan. Again, this has nothing to do with the quality of the game. I really enjoy it. I just don't feel like it does a whole lot new or different enough than a lot of other games in my collection, or a lot of some of the other Phil Walker Hard games that I've played. It's not the first one I would go to in many situations for the genre that it falls into, for the designer, and so it kind of just doesn't get played. It sits on the shelf, and if someone else came over, and I did know someone who really enjoyed this game and would request it, and we would play it, and that's where I got most of my plays in. So it was hitting the table for a period, but I almost had to have someone, you know, in my life who really loved Neoville. I was like, okay, let's play another game of Neoville. And I would have played it. I would have gotten probably even better at it. I would have developed a meta or something. But now I'm just not going to be the one to suggest it. There's other games I'd rather play in my collection. There's new games we're getting all the time that we need to check out. I'm never going to sit down when Carla comes over and say, you know what game we should throw down? Neoville. Whereas there's other older games that Carlo and I have that I would say that. Like I would say, hey, Luis, you know what game we should throw down? Isle of Skye. And I'm not saying that that's like comparable mechanics-wise, but I'm saying that there's an older example of a game that we have no reason to necessarily get new plays in of for the channel, but it's just something I enjoy playing. It's going to, keep a spot. That's Carlo's game. It's going to hold a spot in his collection, I would imagine, for a while. Whereas Neoville, it's not going to be the one that I'm like, oh, we haven't played in a while in Neoville. So it's going to sit there for a while. I know it will. It's already been sitting there, and I've looked at it a few times going, I think it's time to move on from it, and that's basically where I'm at. It's a good game. I think that it has a bit, even though the towers all look really nice when it's all set up, I think that getting them all out of the box, setting them all up in like a market, having everything ready to go, it's a little more trouble than it's worth for what they're actually represented on the board and everything. There's probably a way to produce the components for this game that wouldn't have taken up as much box space, wouldn't have taken up as much, wouldn't be as visually pleasing to look at, but would have been easier to set up. And, it's almost the same feeling I have with like a game like Photosynthesis. Gorgeous to look at, and that one has more of a functional reason for all the trees to exist because of them casting shadows. This one doesn't necessarily, but it just adds this added complexity to the setup and to the the entire experience that maybe isn't always necessary. I think that's the problem that I have with Neoville. It is a really quick playing game, and it is a Phil Walker Harding design, so it does have a lot of elegance to it, and it is a lot of fun to play. But it's just one I probably won't come back to very often, so I decided to part with it, and it is leaving the collection. If you have played Neoville, let me know what you think in the comments, and if you're upset that I'm getting rid of it, like I said, it's a good game, just no longer for me. All right, last game I'm getting rid of. This one I've considered getting rid of multiple times. I really, really enjoy this game. I really do. It's just when I get to games that get past a certain length, have a certain complexity, or there's a couple different factors that games can just have a hard time hitting the table for me. And for this one, it comes down to the length of the play. That if I'm going to sit down and play a game for like an hour and a half plus or 2 hours or whatever the case may be, I will often sit down and say, yeah, I could play that, but if at that point, if I'm going to dedicate this much time to a game, should I play one of these games that I've been wanting to get to the table for a while? And this game ends up always getting bumped. And it's a good game. I feel like I need to bring these games on quicker. I'm just like talking about a game that you guys are like, tell me what the damn game is. I'm gonna bring it on. It's Whistle Stop. Whistle Stop is a game that I've had in my collection for a while. I really enjoy it. But yeah, I think it's listed as 75 minutes, and it's somehow always ended up being longer than that for me. So that's like an hour and 15. But the times that I've played it, it's always felt like it's at least an hour and a half, and that might be just because every single time I play it, I'm introducing it to someone, it seems like. So I'm having to explain the rules, and there's like questions as we go. But even the times I've come back to it with people who have played before, I feel like there's been gaps between our plays, so we end up having to like refresh ourselves and everything. I haven't played the follow-up Whistle Mountain, so I wish I had, so I've been able to make the comparison of, hey, maybe that's a game I'll jump into instead. But like I honestly don't know whether that's the case. I'd like to try Whistle Mountain. I don't know whether it would have replaced this if I had played it. I will say that there's a lot of really cool mechanics going on in Whistle Stop. The way you're adding these hexagon tiles to the board, and the way that your train can only go one direction easily, and to go backwards, you have to use these specific whistle tokens. So it means more if you're going backwards. You have to like really think about making those decisions. The way that you're having to like make stops at different hexagon tiles that had already been put on the board to be able to do trades or to get stocks or whatever the case may be, and those change every game. You have to drop off resources at the end that you've collected throughout to be able to cash in for victory points. Like, it's a fun game. It has a solid design. It just for the amount of, I don't want to say the amount of setup, there's not a whole ton of setup, but for the rules complexity and for the length of the play itself, and for the way that the way it does play, like gathering resources, cashing those resources in for points. I have tons of games in my collection that are about gathering resources and cashing them in for points. I feel like that's a very broad, common mechanic in games. Even a game like Furnace, which is an engine builder. But again, the entire point of that game is you collect resources to be able to cash in for points the most effective way possible. The way you do it is different, but the end result of what you're doing is the same. And that's the same for a lot of games in my collection. I mean, if I wanted to name, I could name like 20 games right now that's the case. So Whistle Stop is one that's competing with too many games in my collection, has a long playing time. Not a lot of people that I know have played it, so I'm having to constantly introduce the rules to and be the one to explain it. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, I could sit down and I could explain Whistle Stop to you, and we could play it for your first play. Or why don't I set up and why don't I teach you to play Tidal Blades, because that's what I want to play, and I'd be more willing to teach the rules of. Why don't I teach you how to play Imperial Steam, a 2-player Imperial Steam? After we've learned all the rules, you could probably crank out in an hour and a half. Like, that's pretty much the same length as Whistle Stop. So what I'm getting at is it's just unfortunately competing with almost every game on my shelf, not only from mechanically, but from length, from box size, from teach. Like, it's just a game that, for whatever reason, for all those reasons, I should say, is just not getting played. And so it sat there for a while. I've hesitated. I put it off because I thought, am I going to regret it? Am I going to change my mind? I decided to cave it and get rid of it, and hopefully someone else ends up with it in their collection. They'll get a bunch of plays out of it. But if you have played Whistle Stop and you have any thoughts on this choice, let me know in the comments. I will be the first one to admit if I've made a mistake, if everyone starts talking about how amazing this game is. But I am gonna at least get rid of it. If one day I have to grab it back because I miss it too much, that's fine. But for now, it is going to leave my shelf. Those are the 8 games. So I got rid of 8 games, or I'm getting rid of 8 games. I'm going to be putting them onto, in case anyone's wondering, we get this question a lot, how do you get rid of your games? For me, I'm going to be putting these games onto Facebook Marketplace, as well as a local classifieds, or a Canadian classified site called Kijiji as well. I usually put them onto there. I see what kind of a response I get, but before I do either of those things, I share the photos that I'm going to be putting up there with all my friends and family, in case anyone I know personally wants any of these games, and they can scoop them up. I usually give them a discount for it, or sometimes even just give them away. But then for the actual Facebook Marketplace, I'll put them up with the prices, and they go surprisingly quick. In Winnipeg, there's a rabid board game market here, apparently, especially if games are in good condition, and their popular games are good games. So that's how I get rid of them. That's how I'll be getting rid of these ones. Let me know what you think in the comments. Did I make any mistakes here? Were you surprised? Which ones were you most surprised by? Did the reasoning make sense? Otherwise, I don't know how often, like I've said before, I had these videos will happen. Now, this one came out close to when Carlos came out, because we both recently moved. And I think after the move, we're both looking to sort of get rid of some games now and clear up some space. So I don't know when the next one will be. I'm going to keep trying to make tough decisions. And as we get more games, we'll have to do more of these videos. But I would imagine you won't see one of these from me for at least a few months. But maybe right before Christmas, I'll have to do another purge or something like that. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Join us in the Discord in the link in the description if you want to chat with us a little bit more. And if you want to find other ways to support us, you can find all that in the description. There's Patreon links, PayPal links, all that kind of stuff as well. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.